Welcome to the first World Chess Championship. In February of 1886, the historic battle for the World Championship continues in St. Louis between Wilhelm Steinitz and Johannes Zukertort. After 6 intense matches, the score remains in Zukertort's favor, 4-2. It's worth to mention that Steinitz managed a crucial victory in the previous game that resulted in reducing the gap. Today we'll examine the 7th match, played on February 5, 1886. This time, Johannes Zukertort plays with the white pieces and Wilhelm Steinitz has the black pieces. For Zukertort, this game represents an opportunity to extend his lead. For Steinitz, it's another chance to move closer toward equalizing the score. After the game, we'll also hear how the leading newspapers of the time commented on this historic encounter. If you haven't watched the previous matches yet, you can find them through the links provided in the description below. Now, let's watch this game together. The seventh game of the first official World Chess Championship between Wilhelm Steinitz and Johannes Zukertort took place on February 5, 1886, in St. Louis. Zukertort, playing with the white pieces, lost to Steinitz after 35 moves. This victory brought the match score to 4-3, still in favor of Zukertort. On the very next day, the St. Louis Globe-Democrat published the following article. The two principals in the great chess tourney, which is at present occupying the attention of the entire chess world, began the second game of their series in the director's room of the Harmony Club, promptly at 2 o'clock. The previous game, which had been one of great skill and brilliancy, had the effect of a grand advertisement. Yesterday, the large room was filled with the devotees of the game and curiosity seekers. Of the contestants, Steinitz was the first to appear upon the scene of his recent victory, and his full face exhibited a good deal of determination and brightness. He still had a strong feeling predicating his success in the great contest, and many of his staunch friends say that he will win, in spite of the lead of 3 games which stared him in the face when he finished the New York engagement. There is a great desire on his part to be the victor, from other than pecuniary reasons. The growing record of Dr. Zukertort as a great player has, for some time, promised to eclipse the marvelous honors which Steinitz had made during his years of successful competition against everyone who figured at all prominently in the royal game. This tournament will effectually establish the supremacy of one of these players, and Steinitz is very desirous of keeping the honors upon this side of the globe. When the hour for the game arrived, Dr. C.D.N. Campbell adjusted the ingenious Vienna clocks and dusted off the chessboard. The two masters then took their seats upon the elevated platform, adjusted chessmen, records, and their glasses, and went to work. Zukertort chose the white and won the lead. The little clock went down with a click. There was a careful searching glance at the board, and an insignificant-looking pawn marched into Queen's fourth. Again the clock clicked, and Steinitz duplicated the move. The game was now fairly underway, and was what is known as the Queen's Gambit declined. Both players settled down to hard labor and deep study. The little Russian rested his head upon his hand, as though in an attitude of prayer. But there was an intelligence in his look, and a firm setting of the jaw that evinced the fact that he was playing chess for all he was worth. In the meantime, Herr Steinitz gave vent to his nervous spirit, and moved about in his chair very much as a man would do who was playing a game with odds greatly against him. So nervous did he become along about the 15th move that he ordered a cup of strong coffee and took an extended stroll in the club lobby. There is one peculiarity about both of these players, which has received very little attention at the hands of the press, and that is their excessively irritable spirit. During the first game, the directors of the Chess, Checker, and Whist Club suffered considerable inconvenience as a result of this peculiarity. This fact is a matter of comment among the chess players of the city. Yesterday, both of the contestants insisted upon the tables being removed into another room owing to some imaginary cause, but when the time for the game arrived, they concluded that the old room would be more convenient. The first 10 moves of the game were rapidly played, but from this point on, both devoted more time to the analysis of the contemplated move. Dr. Zukertort is much the more rapid of the two, and seems to have a line of action laid out before his opponent sets down his piece. At the completion of the 15th move, odds seemed slightly to favor Steinitz, owing to an isolated pawn. But old chessmen refused to make any predictions on such a superficial indication. The picture of one of these great games at any time during their progress is a unique and interesting one. Upon a drab-colored platform about 8 feet by 6 stands an elegantly carved rosewood table. At the right and left of the table sit the greatest players of chess in the world. Upon the right, the short, heavy-set form of Wilhelm Steinitz is bending over the board in a brown study, his sandy beard sweeping over a chessman now and then. Across the board is Dr. Zukertort, who, unlike his antagonist, sits with his back against the chair and contemplates at long range the battlefield. Both players do more squirming to the square inch than a liberated alligator would, and there is every indication that should either of them make a false movement of his men, the world would cease to revolve. As the limits of the game were drawn to more critical situations, both men seemed to be extremely nervous, and the spleen of the Russian was vented by means of impatient refusals to allow his opponent to converse during the game. It was quite evident that the situation at the close of the 26th move, while slightly favoring the black, was desperately close, and both players exercised the greatest care. The plays of Zukertort were now more deliberate, and he consumed almost as much time as his rival across the board. When the 30th inning was reached, popular belief was firm that the white had no hope whatever. The strongholds of the black seemed impregnable. The hour of adjournment was now very near, and Steinitz
was in the midst of a deep study when Zukertort asked if the adjournment should be made after the next move. This led to a spirited discussion of the rules of the game, and was finally brought to a close by Zukertort saying he was ready to go on with the game. It was decided, however, that after Steinitz made his play, the game should be held over until 8 o'clock, as the 4 hours required by the regime had already been exhausted. This met with general approval, and the crowd of chess players scattered for something more substantial. The game is considered by competent experts to be as fine as the one played Wednesday, and it was a subject of extended remark that Steinitz was playing in much better form than at the games in New York City. When the evening session was called to order, Zukertort wore a decidedly worried look, and the predictions regarding the probable termination of the game had doubtless been breathed to him. At 8:30 o'clock, the competitors took their seats upon the elevated platform, and Zukertort, being the first to move, set the clock in motion. His hopes were soon to be cut short, for from the beginning of the evening's work, Steinitz gradually drew in his forces about his adversary, and by the 33rd move, the fate of the Russian was sealed. The game proceeded steadily, without any hitch, until the 36th move, when the white was forced to resign. The Russian looked disappointed, but came down from his chair and talked pleasantly with his friends. Congratulations were offered Steinitz by the score, and it was generally talked that the prospects of the German for winning the tourney were good. There can be no doubt that if he does come out victorious, he will have played the greatest games of chess ever heard of. The next game comes off at the same place at 2 o'clock Monday afternoon. During the rest of their stay here, the players will be entertained by the members of the St. Louis Chess, Checker, and Whist Club.
On the same day, the 6th of February, 1886, the New York Daily Tribune published the following article. The second game in the Chess Championship Series was played this afternoon at the Harmony Hall. As the hour for the opening of the game approached, the number of spectators increased rapidly, and at 2 o'clock the parlors were thronged with distinguished people. General Sherman and wife were the center of the interesting group, and the old warrior was continually importuned for his opinion on the relative strength displayed by the two champions. Chess editors from Chicago, Cincinnati, and Kansas City were present and watched the game with eager interest. Steinitz arrived early and looked serene and calm. He paced up and down the room in a meditative way, with his eyes on the floor. Dr. Zukertort sat chatting with Max Judd and other friends, and said several times that he hoped Mr. Steinitz would do some of his thinking before the game and thus save time. At 2 o'clock, the players took their seats, and Zukertort, who had the move, offered the Queen's Gambit, which Steinitz declined. Both men were ill-humored and lost no opportunity to make each other uncomfortable. Steinitz was as deliberate as usual, and this seemed to make Zukertort nervous. He arose and walked around the room and rolled and smoked cigarettes while waiting for Steinitz to move. As each move was made, the figures on the mammoth board for the benefit of the spectators were arranged to correspond, and the 300 people present watched the struggle with intense interest. The game turned on Dr. Zukertort's 29th move. After his defeat, he told the Tribune reporter that he intended to move his queen instead of his bishop. To this move he ascribed his defeat. He resigned on the 35th move. He requested Mr. Steinitz to play the game from the 28th move for the purpose of illustrating his mistake, but Steinitz said that he was too tired. Then Max Judd sat down with Dr. Zukertort, and after a half-hour's play, the game was drawn. Mr. Steinitz was jubilant over his victory and says that he feels assured now of winning the tournament. Dr. Zukertort spent most of his time after the contest in holding a post-mortem examination on the play. He does not seem dejected, but says that he has been in exceedingly bad form since he arrived. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, and if you want to support me and encourage me to continue making videos for the rest of this championship, then please subscribe and hit the like button. Thanks for watching.